Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad to see everyone. Let's jump in. We have a bunch of stuff that we need to talk about today. Today is going to be one of those days where there's a lot of heavy lifting, okay? Especially if you're new to 3D, there's going to be a lot of things that are going to be thrown at you today. Last week, we really didn't talk too much about Maya last week, right? I got to apologize. I've done this class 4 times, or this intro to Maya, I think, 4 times. We didn't go over Maya last week at all, right? We just talked about how to download the app. Okay, great. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't repeating myself on things that I've already talked about. So today we're going to start looking at how Maya works. Okay, if you have some 3D experience, especially if you're coming from us from last semester, Maya is going to be familiar. There's a lot of crossover, but there are a lot of differences as well. We're going to start off the day by looking at just kind of the introduction to the application and kind of get a good sense of how things are going to work. We're also going to talk about hierarchies a little bit today, and then we're going to jump in and really dive into the the animation and the rendering side of working inside of Maya. Okay? There's going to be a lot of technology today, and I apologize, but we're just going to jump in. Okay? And I'm a big believer that jumping in the deep end is often the best way to start learning how to swim. Okay? As a reference point, please make sure that you subscribe to my YouTube channel, or at least be aware that I'm live streaming today, and we can always go back in and get the notes from what we talked about on the live streams. Okay? So with that said, let's get this pod started. Turn off some lights. The heat in here is a good representation of why I choose to live in California. It is the end of January, right? And we are all collectively going, man, it's really hot outside, right? I have family members that live on the East Coast and in Utah that, it's like in the teens there, right? And all right, so as I mentioned last week, we're going to be building all of our animations in Maya 2018. And before we jump into Maya stuff, I apologize for kind of pulling you back into Canvas. We have 2 assignments that we're going to strive to do. The coin flip we're likely going to do in class today together. Okay, so we're going to get most of this thing of the physical animation of our lab assignment done in class today. The rendering, you'll probably have to do that on your own because it's going to take some time for the computer to draw all these frames. Okay, so we have the coin flip, okay, which is a mechanical exercise. There is very little that is creative about the coin flip. It's just that. Okay. What this assignment allows us to do is, let's just replay it again. It gets us up and running. Get out of here. It gets us up and running with the animation system, and the material system, and the rendering system inside of Maya, which are 3 big components. Okay. I've supplied you with everything that you'll need for this assignment. So if you go into the resources section on this part of the website, you'll see the coin flip start file. That's something that you'll need to make sure you download and save. Okay? So we'll do that here in a minute. In addition, we also have the solar system, which is going to be your opportunity to apply these animation principles and this system to a very simple animation of our solar system. More on that here in a minute. So that's the 10,000-yard kind of perspective of what we're going to do today. The basics of animation, just getting something to move in Maya, getting some simple materials applied to these objects inside of Maya, and then, of course, we're going to ask the computer to draw our animations into a flip book, okay? Or into an image sequence, excuse me. Questions on what it is that we're striving to accomplish? Everyone's good? Rock and roll. Let's jump into it. All right, so Maya 2018 is, of course, naturally been placed down in the dock. Please note, the icon for both of these apps is a gigantic M, so be careful with what you select. Okay, Mudbox is a sculpting app, not our animation app. Maya has always been a world-class animation program. Many people choose to animate in Maya because of its depth and because of its stability in the animation pipeline. You're going to find that out there in the real world, everyone's going to rig, animate, and render in Maya. They're not necessarily going to model because we have a lot of choices when it comes to the modeling front, but the rigging and the animation tool set is best in class. It's really quite good, okay? So everything is going to, when it comes to animating, everything is going to end up back in Maya one way or another, okay? So let's take a look at the basic workings of how this interface is going to happen. You're going to find that there's a lot of technology going on, okay? And I mean a lot of technology. Let me see if I can get my screen back to, let me do this. Okay. So your screen should look similar to this, okay? If it doesn't look similar to this, in every sense, the person that was sitting down at these stations before you has customized this workspace ever so slightly. And this is going to be a challenge for us in the Maya world because we can actively customize the workspace. If we're coming from Modo, our interface didn't change too much, but here in the Modo or in the Mayaverse, things are definitely customizable over in the lab. So the first thing that I want to draw your attention to is this workspace pull-down menu at the top right-hand portion of our screen. Okay, I'm in the Maya Classic. It kind of simulates or replicates what Adobe's been doing for a number of years with their workspaces. Maya Classic for us as animators is where we're going to hang out. But keep in mind, this semester I have the Intro to Computer Animation with you guys. Tomorrow I have my game art class, which is all 3D modeling, sculpting, and UVing, okay? And then on Thursday, I have GCOM 402, which is the introduction to 3D modeling, okay? Point being, we have a lot of different classes changing the Maya interface. For us in here, Maya Classic is where we're going to hang out for the most part. The Maya Classic interface, when compared to the others, really provides us quick, easy access to the timeline down at the bottom, okay? This is our timeline, then our range slider, start and stop dates. I mean, a lot of things that we've seen or that we expect to see in the context of animation. So Maya Classic is where we're going to hang out. If you're doing some modeling, definitely check out the other modeling workspaces. There's some good stuff in there. There really is. I find myself flipping back and forth between this one and Maya Classic very, very frequently. So just point being, we can change the interface. If you've lost your time slider at the bottom, it's probably not in Maya Classic. It's probably back on Modeling Standard, which completely removes some big chunks of our interface. Okay, let's go back to Maya Classic, and let's get something inside of our scene so we can start seeing how the other parts of the interface are going to help us animate our stuff. Okay. All right, so the other part that's a lot of fun to deal with inside of Maya are all these tabs, these shelves. Maya is a super deep app, and I mean, it is incredibly deep. This is, when it comes to complexity and sophistication, if Modo is like the Great Lakes, okay, Maya is the Pacific Ocean, okay? It's just, they're different bodies of water. One is significantly deeper than the other. We have the benefit of working in an app that's been around since the dawn of this industry. Maya is one of the original 3D modeling apps. So it's been actively developed for about 30 years, okay? So it's got some good DNA, but that DNA comes with a tremendous amount of depth as well. So these are called shelves inside of Maya, okay? And if you start clicking and going through all the shelves, you can see pretty quickly how expansive this entire workflow and this entire environment is, okay? This is a platform. Modo was just an app that did a lot of stuff. Maya is a platform, okay? People build tools that it can extend Maya to do a number of different things. Shoot, Maya has its own programming language called MEL, and MEL stands for the Maya Embedded Language, okay? I saw a really great demonstration, and this was like literally probably 12 or 13 years ago. A computer scientist was using Maya, and he built all these really cool battle bots. Did I say this in this class? Yeah. I mean, it's just crazy to me, right? It's a deep app. I bring this to your attention because over in the design lab, people are going to be poking around. Okay, people are going to change things. They're going to go to different shelves. They're going to change the interface. It's important to go back to the defaults pretty quickly and understanding how to get to the tools that we're after. So for us, what we're going to do is that we're going to go to our poly modeling shelf, and let's just throw, I don't know, a donut into the mix. I just clicked on that button, and you can see pretty quickly here that Maya has thrown a donut into the scene. Okay. Now let's talk about keyboard navigation inside of Maya. The viewport's going to be our primary work area. Okay. So there's a couple big keyboard navigation commands that we need to be ninjas at to ensure we're able to do what we're looking to do. Okay. I'm going to write these on the whiteboard so everyone can have a point of reference. So, navigation. Some of you guys have already stumbled on it. Okay. Orbit. What is it? Yeah. Rotating. How do we rotate around in our viewport? Anyone? You got it. So the option key plus left mouse button. Okay? That's the orbit command that allows you to rotate around your objects. In 3D, when it comes to our objects, these are static models. They're not moving. We are moving, right? I always like to use the metaphor that we're like an astronaut on the International Space Station, right? The space station isn't moving. I got one of those super rad little jetpacks, and I'm like, psh, psh, I'm like cruising around the outside of the space station. It's not moving. We are the ones that are moving, okay? Everything is static at the central part of our scene initially, okay? So to rotate or to orbit around our object, we hold down the option key and the left mouse button and drag. This is called an orbit, okay? Now, we're only rotating our view around the central pivot point or the central tumble point. Sometimes we want to move like this. This is called a pan. So we can move it up and down, left and right. How do we do that? Has anyone stumbled on that yet? So on the option or on PC, it's going to be the Alt key. Yeah. But the pan, a little bit different. Once again, it's the option key. This time, we're adding the middle mouse button, which brings us to our first hardware consideration for working with inside the Autodesk package. Okay? Required, gotta have, is no way around it, as they say. Gotta have one of these things. I mentioned this last week. I saw someone working on a laptop on Friday in the lab, and they're like, can I do this with a trackpad? No. You can't do it with a trackpad. You have to have a 3-button mouse, okay? Gotta have a 3-button mouse, okay? This middle mouse button is going to be a central part of our entire navigational system, so please make sure you have a 3-button mouse. And I don't remember if I said it to you guys or another class. It doesn't need to be a fancy 3-button mouse, okay? I spend $8.99 on $3-button mouse, mices, whatever it is, and life is good, okay? So the option middle mouse button is going to allow you to pan. What allows you to zoom in and zoom out? Yeah, option right mouse button. Now, someone said you can also use the scroll wheel. Yeah, you could do that. I would recommend that you try really hard not to use the scroll wheel, and I'll show you why here in a second. The preferred way to zoom, okay, is option plus the right mouse button. Now, this is actually kind of a neat system, because if you look at all 3 of these viewport navigation commands, what's the common denominator? The option key. That makes life easy, right? If you compared it to Moto, there's kind of this weird combo of keyboard shortcuts that we needed to use to do the exact same thing. So now it's just the option key, and then left, middle, and right mouse button will do our job, okay? All right. The scroll wheel will also zoom in and zoom out. It will do that, okay? Now, I don't have a problem with this, but there is kind of a landmine that sometimes people step on when it comes to that scroll wheel. The amount that you zoom is entirely linked to, I don't know, how far the wheel clicks. I guess that's the only way I can describe it, right? Some mouse wheels have a really small click distance when you're scrolling, right? Others, like this mouse has a pretty big click distance, okay? And look how much I'm going in and out there. I'm just kind of clicking it, scrolling it 1 click at a time. I can't, if I wanted to zoom in just a little bit, that's not going to give me, I'm not going to be able to do that with this system. So I like to use the right mouse button, because then I'm in direct control, right? I can get as close or as far away as I want. Another great keyboard shortcut that's going to help. Sometimes we get so close, or inversely, we get so far away that we lose our objects in our 3-dimensional space, okay? The F key is going to be your friend, okay? F is going to fit or frame the contents of your scene in the viewer. So if you've lost your stuff, hit the F key, okay? It's going to put everything in your scene in the center of your scene, or center of the viewport, excuse me, I misspoke. So simply hitting the F key, we're back in action, okay? So those are some really good keyboard navigation commands that will help you navigate this three-dimensional space. One of the things that's very different from working inside of other 3D apps in comparison is our understanding of our 3D environment. Maya keeps it pretty sparse, okay? It's pretty simple, it's pretty basic. If you compare the atmosphere that we have here to other 3D apps, Maya doesn't jump up and down and really communicate to you guys, the user, the current orientation, or they don't give us any help with us understanding up, down, left, and right, okay? Now let's define some of this stuff real fast, because I think it's really important on day one to look a little bit more closely at this. This is an intro to computer animation class. For many folks in here, you haven't had any experience with 3D. So let's kind of get our sea legs, as they say. Let's get up and running. 3D animation and 3D modeling actually requires us to go back, for some it's a painful journey, go back to 10th grade geometry class. You guys remember that? I used to hate 10th grade. Actually, I loved geometry, but the part that I hate was my teacher always forced us to show the work, right? It's like, you remember that? It's like you always knew the answer was, like, show the work. It's like, I gotta figure out like equations and all that stuff. It's like, I know the answer. Isn't that what's most important? No, right? And one of the things that you do in 10th grade geometry class is you plot points on what's called a Cartesian grid. You guys remember this? Something that looks something similar to this? Little ruler markers in here. Yeah. Hopefully I'm not like revisiting some sort of past trauma. I know geometry is a tough class for some folks, right? So oftentimes what you do is that you like put a dot like right here, and then your teacher will be like, tell me the exact coordinate of that dot. And how would you do it? Do you remember how you did it? You're right. Show your work. You're right. How would you do it? How would you figure out the location of this dot?
You go along the x-axis, and you go along the y-axis.
You got it. Which one's the x?
The horizontal line.
This one. You got it. This is the x-axis, okay? The x-axis defines the horizontal plane, the left and right, if you will, okay? It always is going to be the horizontal plane. Inversely, what's the y-axis? The vertical. This is the y, right? So, as Nicole pointed out, to find the location of this dot, we first start measuring along the x by counting the ruler markers. 1, 2, right? That's generally where it is, right? And then up and down, 1, 2. And we'd write the location like this. The first number is always x, the second number is the y-axis. Boom, we just found the location of that dot in two-dimensional space, right? The x-axis is horizontal, the y-axis is vertical, but we're working with 3D. The z-axis, okay? So what in the world? Z-axis is often communicated like this. Same idea. Okay. What is the z-axis responsible in describing? Yes? Say again? Depth. You got it. Depth, okay? So if you want to take a step back and look at it, the x-axis is like left and right, okay? The y-axis is up and down, but then the z-axis is forwards and backwards. It's the depth axis, right? If we go back maybe 5 or so minutes, I mentioned that often I like to think of us as little astronauts, okay, floating around in space. Because that's kind of like what it's like, right, inside of Maya or any 3D app for that matter, right? It's like this infinite environment on the inside of that little viewport, right? Did you guys ever see the film Gravity with Sandra Bullock? Right? It's both like the best case and worst case scenario, right? It's awesome, like space stuff, and then like this is not a spoiler because it happens in the trailer. Like an asteroid or something, like it collides with the space station, and then she starts tumbling out of control inside of space. Well, if you started to tumble out of control inside of space, how would you communicate back to mission control what direction you're facing, right? In a world without landmarks, what's up? What's down? What's left? What's right? On good old planet Earth, it's really easy to do that, right? I can almost always tell you which direction is up and which direction is down. How? How can I do that? Bingo. We simply just look for the horizon line, right? The sky and the ground is going to tell us where up and down is, right? We don't have a horizon line, nor do we have a sky or a ground. How can we do that, right? We need to have some sort of common reference point that serves as a landmark for us, that gets us pointed in the right direction, that we all can understand, right? Luckily for us, we don't have to go too far. Our Cartesian grid starts to help us out very directly with this, okay? So there's one quadrant, and I've actually already labeled it, happenstance, where all the values are going to be positive values. What quadrant is it? If you were to break this into 4 quadrants, 1, 2, 3, and 4, where are we going to find positive values for both the x and y? 2. Yeah, in 2, right? So this is the positive quadrant. Okay, I bring this to your attention because all of these integers are positive numbers, right? On the opposite side, what are they? Negative numbers. This would be like -1, -2, -3, so on and so forth for the other one, right? At the center of this, we have a very specific and important location. This is one of the common denominators, one of the landmarks that we need to be aware of. What is the center? The origin. Good job, Randall. You got it, right? This is the origin, right? Give him a high five. This is the origin, okay? Woo! So, there we go. Its location is 0, 0, 0. It is the center of our existence here inside of 3D, okay? It is the sun of our solar system. Everything rotates and revolves around the origin of our three-dimensional scene. Carefully, back in here in Maya, a close examination of our three-dimensional grid here is going to show us the origin. See, we have these 2 dark lines. The intersection of those 2 dark lines is the origin. That's the center of our scene. Okay, that's one of our landmarks that's going to help us stay on the same page. Okay, the origin. Now, for us in Maya, the origin is a really important element. All of our objects are going to be created at the origin. Every locator, every light, every camera. Whenever we generate something inside of Maya, it's almost always 9.9999 times out of 10 going to be placed automatically at the origin of the scene. So it's an important point for us. Okay. If you take GCOM 424 or 402, the modeling classes, you'll know directly that the origin is going to be a modeling tool. Instead of building the entire car, we build half, and then we mirror and duplicate the other half around the origin. So the origin becomes a really central point for us when it comes to all things 3D. But it doesn't solve the problem of communicating to maybe a fellow artist or an animator what's up and what's down. Right? What's left? What's right? Where's the front of the scene and where's the back? How do we all get on the same page? Well, luckily for us, there are some there are some common conventions that we can use that our industry is kind of standardized around. Okay? Okay. So, if you were modeling something, and why this is important, if you were modeling something like a character, you'll see this not next week, but the week after when we start messing around with characters, okay? I know. It comes very soon in this class, right? You're going to see your characters sitting at the origin in what's called the T-pose. Okay, this is what it looks like, right? We model everything at the T-pose. Does anyone know why we model characters at the T-pose?
To make them symmetrical.
To make them symmetrical. And it just seems right? I love it, yeah? Okay. Here's Pat's crazy explanation. It's just easier. It really is, right? Modeling like a character in the classic Heisman pose, hard, right? That's difficult. This is easy. This is hard, okay? So I'm always going to choose easy, right? But, if we're modeling something at the T-pose, there are certain landmarks of our character that need to be facing certain directions in order for the character riggers, the texture artists, the layout, crew, the director to be able to place and animate and position all these characters and whatever inside of our three-dimensional scene cohesively, right? So like the nose of our character needs to be facing the front of the scene. Well, what's the front? How do we communicate that? What have we kind of standardized around? Does anyone know? Z positive, you got it. Okay? So the positive side, and we'll do up and then front. The positive side of the z-axis is going to be the front of the scene. Okay? What about up? Positive y. You got it. So the positive side of the y-axis, the items that are on that area of our grid are going to be at the top of the scene, are going to be facing up. So this in here, this is the top, this is the bottom, this is the front, and this is the back. Okay? Luckily for us, the developers down at Autodesk know this, and they've given us a compass to keep us all on the same page. And you can find that compass way down here in the lower left-hand corner of your OpenGL viewport. Okay? That compass is literally pointing towards the positive side of each one of those axes. Okay? I always think of the lines coming out of the compass there as gigantic arrows. I've orbited and tumbled my scene to a point where the left side of the scene is kind of facing that way, towards my office. Okay? The front of my scene, where is it? Where's the front of the scene? Kind of coming at you, kind of pointing towards Izzy a little bit. Okay? That's the front. And of course, up is that way. This is something that we should keep an eye on because it's going to help us keep our bearings. Okay? It's called the compass for a very specific reason. The compass helps us find our way. And a really important element when we've done this. Okay? Because if you look at it, that, just if you were to ignore the compass for a second, that looks remarkably similar to that. Okay? Right now, we are upside down. Okay? And the only thing that's going to tell me that I'm upside down in Maya is the compass. Okay? The compass is going to keep us all on the same page. So keep an eye out for that compass. If you ever get confused, if someone tells you, hey, move your object to the front of the scene or move it up, just you have to keep kind of tabs on your spatial relationships and your bearings instead of three-dimensional space. Okay? One of the things that I wish Maya would steal from Modo are those nice little subconscious indicators of the positive sides of all of our grids. I kind of miss that. I loved having little markers on the boundaries of our grid that said negative x, negative z, positive z. That helped us keep us in the right angle. Okay? All right. Pretty neat, huh? Let's talk about selections for a second. Okay? Working inside the viewport is only about 25% of what we're going to be doing as animators in the 3D space. Okay? All right. Keep losing my marker.
So is there a hotkey for resetting your view?
For
recentering.
recentering, just yeah, the F key. The F key is going to fit everything. Yeah, we'll come back and we're going to talk more about the nuance of the F key when we pair it with a selection. All right. So we need to change a couple things, some vocab words. This is an interesting semester for us because this is the only semester likely that we're going to have some folks knowing Maya, some folks knowing Modo, and one class, right? So for the folks that know Modo, that have been with me for a couple different semesters, we have some vocab that we need to change. Working inside of 3D requires us to work in hierarchies, okay? Everything in 3D is a hierarchy of one kind or another, especially when it comes to animation, right? Probably even more so when it comes to animation. A control rig for our character is probably about 50 or 60 different parts and pieces that are all working together to deform our character to make them, sing and dance and all that jazz, right? They're placed inside of the rig and inside of our three-dimensional scene in a hierarchy, which brings us to the first question. What in the world is a hierarchy? What's a hierarchy? You guys know hierarchies.
Organization.
Chain of command, I like it. Organization, yeah, I like it. You guys work with hierarchies every single day, and you probably don't even know it, okay? File folders on your computer, that's a hierarchy, right? If we were to go back to like, the Middle Ages or something like that, who would be the person that is at the top of the hierarchy? Maybe. I'm going to go easy and say king or queen, right? So, and I really don't know the hierarchy because I'm not like I teach animation, not like medieval literature or something like that, or history, right? So this is history according to Pat, and I take certain liberties with that, I really do. Joking. So at the top of the hierarchy, like, medieval times, you'd have like the king or the queen, okay? And then, I really don't know. So you have like, if the person under the kings and the queens, who don't have as much control would be like, I don't know, like the nobles of some kind. Okay. And then you'd have like the knights. I don't know. I'm making this up. And then I know knights like used to have like squires that they were in charge of. Okay. And then you keep going, and eventually you get down to the serf, right? Does anyone know what the serf is? It's a part of history that I've always just kind of hung on to. It's like the peon of the medieval world, the serf. These are the laborers in the field and what have you that have like no power, no say, and they're at the bottom of the literal hierarchy and food chain in that area. And all they're supposed to do is just like farm crops for the king or queen, right? That's all they're allowed to do. Okay. This is a hierarchy, right? Whatever the king or queen says, everyone underneath it needs to follow directions, right? We're working in the exact same kind of world here in 3D. Everything is a stair-stepped hierarchy, okay? The serf has a certain degree of freedom, but wherever the squire goes, so goes the serf, okay? Wherever the nobles goes, so goes the knights, the squires, and the serf. Everything kind of moves with them together as a unit, right? In Maya, it's all about hierarchies, okay? The king or the queen inside of Maya is not a king or a queen, the topmost element. In Maya, everything is an object first. Object. Okay. If you're coming from Modo, this equals item. They are one and the same, the exact same thing. Okay? Just different terminology. All right? So we are an object-based animation system here inside of Maya. So depending on the different types of objects, and we saw when we were exploring the contents of their shelf, the ability to create a whole spectrum of different objects. Objects can be meshes, they can be cameras, lights, simulated fluids, particle systems. I mean, the list of objects is pretty long, okay? But let's keep it easy. Something that we can kind of relate to, especially with a selection system in hand. Let's pretend this is a piece of geometry, like our little donut here, okay? Everything. So we have, I want to put faces. They're often referred to as surfaces here instead of Maya as well. In Modo, these would be just straight up polys. Okay? Next up, you want to take a guess? Edges, yep. Edges. And then the surf of the 3D world. Anyone? Vertices? Yeah. Vertices. Vertices, okay? Yeah, a vert is just a point, just a dot in space, okay? All right, let's jump back over here and let's look at our selection engine, because we want to be able to select within inside of this hierarchy, right? At times we want to be able to select the parent, the object itself, but other times we want to be able to go in and begin to manipulate all the verts very locally, or maybe just grab an edge or a polygon and work with those independently from the rest of the system, okay? So our selection engine inside of Maya is really easy to command, okay? Even though we're working with the animation tool set in here, there's one area that's really a 3D modeling kind of centric area that I would encourage you to explore until you are ninjas at the keyboard shortcuts, okay? And that's the modeling toolkit which is this icon. I'm in the upper left-hand corner, by the way, or right-hand corner. I apologize. This is the modeling toolkit. So the little hammer with the square behind it. The first row of buttons inside the modeling toolkit allow us to select within inside our hierarchy. This is object mode. Okay? This is when we can, if we were to simply left click on our donut, we select it. That green outline of the wireframes tells us that we're in object mode, and we have in fact selected this object. If we continue cruising down this row, this is verts, edges, and polygons. Okay? If you look at the keyboard shortcuts, this is F8, F9, 10, and 11. Okay? So until you're ninjas with the keyboard shortcuts, come here. This is a great way for us to very quickly swap over to polygons, and now I can select a couple polys. Okay? Or grab some edges. Okay? And we're on our way.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Can't you right-click on the polygon also?
Absolutely. Yep, for sure. Like Photoshop, there's a zillion different ways to do the exact same thing. All right. For you Moto knots out there, it's going to be difficult breaking the habit of tapping the spacebar to change your selection set. It's going to be really difficult. Okay? The spacebar was a central keyboard shortcut for the entire Moto ecosystem. The spacebar does almost nothing inside of Maya, right? Or nothing. It does something very different. Let's put it that way. Okay? It's going to be a hard thing to transition away from. Okay. All right. So let's select our object here. So we have selection options here, and then on the left side, these are some basic tools. Okay. We actually have 3 selection tools available to us. We have the direct selection tool, the marquee selection tool, and then the paint selection tool. Okay? The Q key is going to be the keyboard shortcut to activate the selection tool itself. In Moto, the selection tool was basically always on. You didn't actually have to turn it on, right? It was persistent, and then you activated a tool on top of it. And then when you dropped that tool, the selection tool was automatically reapplied. That's not the case here in Maya, right? We physically have to tell the computer to go back to the selection tool, okay? So the Q key, Q is in Quebec, okay, is going to allow you to change your selection or to reactivate the selection tool, okay? We'll come back to the other two tools here in a second, okay? But I want to draw focus to these down here. This is move, rotate, and scale. Just like every other app on the face of the planet, W, E, and R. Specifically, if you look down at your keyboard, Q, W, E, and R are right next to each other, okay? Maya's Maya's control mechanism is built around your hand resting on Q, W, E, and R, okay? Moto's was very different, right? Moto basically encouraged you to hang out kind of by the space bar. Maya wants you to hang out much higher up on the keyboard, okay? All right, so I think I got my donut still selected, so let's fire off the good old move tool. We get some action handles in the center here, and now I can begin to translate this object anywhere I want inside of my three-dimensional scene. Question I got last week, especially when it comes to rotating, is there a way for us to rotate around defined increments? Yes, it's the J key. If you were to hold down the J key before you click on the circle, you can snap to 15-degree increments, which is kind of handy. J. J is in Juliet. Or that's my jam. Sorry. My youngest son goes around saying that. Yes, it's the most ridiculously cute thing you've ever seen. A 3-year-old come up to you and say, "That's my jam," right? It's cute. Anyways, all right, I digress. So working in object mode is going to allow us to control a whole series of pieces together as a group, if you will. So I'm in object mode, right? So I'm in object mode. I clicked on it with the left mouse button. And then I hit the E key, or you simply can just hit this button here in your interface, and that will bring up the action handles, the tool handles for the rotation tool. All right. But what if, question? Great segue. Let's actually talk about those components, okay? Because those component pieces, things change a little bit when we start looking at the components, okay? So let's get out of my object selection state, and I'm going to go into faces. It's a little bit easier to see what's going on, all right? All right. I'm just going to apologize right now. The selection color for all of our faces is this very, very faint light orange, or tan, salmon. I don't know what color this is, but it's the I can barely see you color, okay? Especially on the big screen here. For you guys locally, it's going to be a whole lot easier to see what's selected. So I'm going to apologize right now. I recognize that that's a tough color to see. Would you mind if I changed it? Would that be okay? Just to make it a little bit easier for you guys to see. So it is going to look different than what you guys see on your screen, but there's an easy way for us to change it because I can barely see it. If you go into the Windows section, settings and preferences, and there's a whole color palette that you can customize. And specifically, is it active or interactive? I cannot remember off the top of my head. I think it's I'll find it. Give me a second. I always forget. Modeling, nope. Objects. New. Yeah, here we go. I apologize. It's under the Active tab, Components, and it's Polygon Faces. And I'm just going to change it to yellow, because yellow is a whole lot easier to see, methinks. Is that easier? Yeah, that's a lot easier to see, I think, for you guys than the previous color. Okay? Okay. All right, so how we're going to select things in Maya is simply with the left mouse button. Okay? So if we were to just simply click on this, I'm holding down the Shift key, by the way, to add polygons to my selection. I can add them in. Okay? Now, one of the cool things about the selection inside of Maya is that it allows you to get this cool little selection highlight. See how it's red there? That's telling me that if I was to click right now, boom, that's the polygon that I would select. I want you to pay very close attention to the color of that selection highlight. What color is it now on an unselected polygon? It's red, okay? I want to zoom in so you guys can see this. This is going to take some getting used to. If I was to, I'm going to hold down the Shift key so I can add this polygon to my current selection. Boom, I've selected it. However, see when I mouse over it goes green? Now, I'm not doing anything. I'm just holding down the Shift key. That's the only thing I'm doing, right? If I was to click again, it's going to unselect that component. So it's kind of like an on, off, on, and then we can just click off of it again, and it will remove it. Yeah?
My selection is it only uses like a box. It doesn't have that free form, kind of like click and drag and hold. This is the only way I can select them like that.
I'm just left mouse buttoning. You're dragging.
Oh, yeah.
Now hold down the Shift key and you can add more.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go. Don't drag. Don't drag. So Bronco has a tough thing that he's got to reprogram, because over in Moto, what did you do when you wanted to select a whole bunch? You left-clicked and dragged on the object, right? And it did a paint selection for you on the surface, right? It's awesome. Love that. Here inside of Maya, when you left-click and drag, you actually click or you drag out a selection box. And whatever is inside that selection box is going to get selected. Okay? That's a big time difference. Okay? Big time difference. In addition, let me show you something here. Right now, I have a very important parameter called camera-based selection turned off. Okay? And I turned it off just real quick so I can select something and then show you what I've selected. I'm not going to orbit my view. I'm over in the modeling toolkit. Camera-based selection is off, okay? And as a refresher, just kind of so everyone's on the same page, I just did this. Left click, drag out of box. Bloop. Okay. Now in Modo, what would this do? It would select just the polygons that are facing you. So right now, are you expecting the back of the model to be selected or unselected? Unselected, right? Let's take a look. In Maya, nope. With camera-based selection on, the marquee selection tool is going to select through the entire thing, and it's going to grab whatever is inside that box, okay? Which can be really cool, because that's a fast way for us just to select things really fast. We actually had this functionality over in Modo, but we had to hold down the right mouse button and drag out a box. It's the exact same thing. In Maya, the entire selection engine centers around that left mouse button, okay? What I like to do is turn camera-based selections on, right? Because what if we just wanted to grab like all of these polygons right here? On the surface, it would seem like I've grabbed those just with my selection box, but in actuality, I have selected all of that stuff and all of that stuff on the back too. It's as if like a laser beam of selection powers like zipped through the entire mesh, and whatever was touching that beam was selected, okay? So with camera-based selections on, it's a little bit easier to see and understand what the selection engine's given for us. Let's turn it on. Same thing. I'm going to left click and drag out a box, but this time I've only selected the polygons that were inside the box that were facing the camera. I didn't get anything on the back. I didn't get anything on the front. Okay? That's an important distinction, okay, especially if you're coming from other apps, that camera-based selection. Now, Bronco and I love just left-clicking and dragging over the surface to select all the polygons. That is a bit of muscle memory. That
You can do it though.
we can do it in here. We can do it, but it's different, right? In Modo, it's just kind of the default function. If you just left-clicked and dragged on your surface, wherever your mouse would go, it would go as well. It would select whatever it is we want to select, okay? Now, we have that same functionality built in here in Maya, but there's a couple ways of accessing it. Here's the painful way, and then I'll show you the easy way. I mentioned earlier that there's actually 3 different selection tools. The direct selection tool, the lasso selection tool, and then the paint selection tool. Okay, let's do this one real fast. Okay. Now, when we mouse over our mesh, we get a representation of a brush head. Okay. Holding down the B key, B as in boy or brush or bravo, is going to allow you to interactively change the size of that selection brush. And that's an application-wide shortcut, by the way. Okay? And now, wherever I brush, I select. And I'm just left-clicking and dragging, and I'm on my way. Cool, right? That's neat. However, I hate this. I hate this with a passion. I really don't like it. Let me show you the easy way. And this is something that I wish someone would have shown me about 5 years ago. Would have saved me a lot of cursing. So I've returned back to my normal selection engine, okay? If I was to left click and drag, I get a box. However, if I was to hold down the tab key, okay? Tab key, check it out. Once again, my mouse cursor changes. Does that look familiar? It kind of looks like a little brush head with a plus sign on it, right? Now, if I hold down the tab key, I can left click and drag on the mesh, and wherever I go is going to select. Okay, the tab key, tab, tab, tab. Okay, yeah, that's one that I wish someone would have shown me, because I cursed Maya for many, many years. Because I went, seriously? Say again? Yeah, if you hold down the tab key and then left click and drag on the mesh, hold down the tab key. Now I'm in faces. Left click and drag. Wherever your cursor goes, or whatever your cursor goes over, will be selected. Holding Shift and Tab. Shift and Tab. Shift and Tab goes back to the marquee selection engine. Yeah. Don't do Shift and Tab, just add Shift key.
So, is there any difference between tab and shift?
Yes. So the Tab key is going to get you that paint selection engine. It's called the drag selection engine. Okay? I'm just dragging on the mesh, and wherever my cursor goes, it selects it. Now, if I wanted to deselect it, okay, so let's say I didn't want these. I'm still holding tab. Notice that it's green, and my mouse cursor has a little minus sign next to it. Now I can just drag up, and those will get deselected. So you don't necessarily have to do like Shift and Control to add and subtract components to your selection, okay? Pay attention to the selection highlight color. When it's red, it's going to add like that. When it's green, it's going to subtract like that, okay? Just so everyone's on the same page, when we hold down the Tab key, really what we're doing is that we're switching from Pick Marquee to Drag. So if you permanently want to change it, just click there in your Modeling Toolkit. Holding down the Tab key just kind of temporarily swaps it. See how when I mouse or when I let go of my Tab key, it goes back, Tab down, Tab up, or I can just say permanently go to Drag if I want. All right, other questions about the selection engine inside of Maya? For us as animators, primarily we're going to be working with objects, okay? So keep, remember F8. That's going to be the component, or the object selection shortcut that we're going to want to remember. If you're a modeler, then the rest of the stuff is critical. Super, super important, okay? All right. So one more thing, we'll take a small little break, okay? We've been working in the viewport, but for us as animators, we're going to need to get a really good understanding of the objects that are available to us in the scene itself. I would love to have an item list, okay? In Modo, we had the item list, and it showed us all the members of our scene. It showed us every single item that was currently influencing our three-dimensional scene. We have the exact same thing. It's called the outliner inside of Maya. And you can find access to your outliner by going to the Windows pull-down menu at the top of the screen. It's down here towards the middle, outliner. You're going to find that Maya is window after window after window. It's probably the most challenging part of its interface, is that there's a lot of separate windows. In other 3D apps, things are condensed. They have, one window and a couple different tabs. Maya likes to have a zillion different windows, okay? The outliner is going to be an important window for us, so get used to coming back to it over and over and over again, okay? If I open up my outliner, okay, here it is, okay? And you can dock this in a couple different places. I'm just going to leave it as a floating popover. But now the outliner is going to show us a list of all the different objects that are currently residing inside of our scene. We have 4 cameras. P-Torus 1 is the donut that I have. And then we have the default light set, okay? This is where we can go to navigate and select things, make relationships between different objects inside the scene. If we have a very complex scene and we simply want to go find like the torus, for example, I can just simply left click it in the outliner and begin to manipulate it. Cool, huh? Pretty cool. One final thing about interface and just kind of working in this environment is actually the spacebar. The spacebar is an important part of our workflow, but it does something a little bit different. In other applications, the spacebar actually doesn't have a function, or if you're coming from Modo, the spacebar changed our selection sets and dropped the tools, okay? But here, the spacebar, tapping the spacebar, is going to change your viewport, okay? It's going to minimize and maximize a couple different views, okay? So if you were to tap the spacebar, you go from a single view of the perspective camera over into a quad view, okay? Look very carefully at the bottom of each one of these OpenGL viewports. This one's the top. The one that we were just in is the PERSP, stands for perspective, okay? Down here at the bottom, this is side X, and this is the front, okay? Now the cool thing about this workflow is that we very quickly can go to a different view by using the spacebar. So check it out. I'm in the perspective view. I tap the spacebar. Now if I wanted to look at the top view of my scene from the full screen, when I start going over here, it's kind of hard to see, and you'll see this on yours. When I click inside these viewports, you see how that little small gray boundary changes? Whatever viewport has that gray boundary represents the viewport that's going to be maximized when we hit the spacebar again. So right now, my gray boundary is on the top. So if I hit the spacebar, that one comes full screen. Here's the front. I'm going to click, spacebar. Spacebar again, go back to perspective, spacebar. Okay. I can see some enterprising individuals exploring what happens when you press and hold the spacebar. Yeah?
What happens when you press space? It goes just to like just to one with the.
Do it again? Okay. So right now, what we're doing is that when we're going to spacebar, we're going from this view to actually the quad view, which is another viewport. Okay? And then we're maximizing it. We're just basically going back to this view. It's not, this button doesn't define the view of your scene. It defines, it's like there's one window versus 4 smaller windows. Okay? So if you're hitting spacebar and it's just slightly changing, go here and then go here. And then once you're in quad view, then hit spacebar and it should go back. Then you also have this one. I hang out in this one a lot. So you get 2 views, okay? And then this is the outliner down there at the bottom, okay? All right, real quick, because I started to say it, and I want you guys to be aware of this, because you guys are, I can see people already starting to explore what happens when you press and hold the space bar. Tapping the space bar simply just changes your view, right? But you can kind of see it. See something flickering on the screen there? Do you see it? Right underneath my mouse cursor? What in the world? Okay. I want to press and hold the spacebar now. This is called the marking menu. Okay. And this is an incredibly frustrating environment for a lot of folks to work, but I want you to be aware of it because it can cause problems if you're not careful. Okay. The marking menu, some people like to have the complete functionality of the entire app underneath their mouse cursor, which is just fine, okay? If you look, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to, I was able to do it, great. If you look at, these are all different menus. Here's the file menu, the edit menu, modify. Basically all the menus that are at the top of the screen, the pull-down menus, have been duplicated in here, okay? Here's all of our mesh control. I mean, it's basically the entire command of the application underneath your mouse cursor. Okay? Yeah, question?
What's Arnold?
Arnold's our rendering engine.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll come back to that in a minute. Some people love this. I find this a really frustrating work environment for me personally, so I don't use it that often. Okay? The one thing that I do find myself coming back to over and over again is this center button. See how it says Maya? Okay? If we were to left click and hold on that button, what do you see? Left view, right view, bottom view, front view, back view. It's a way for us to very quickly change the view of our scene. Okay? So for example, I can just go to the left, and there's the left. I can go to the top, and there's the top of my scene, right? So it's a great way for us to jump around. We had something very similar to this over in Moto. Okay? Some people love it, some people hate it. I want you to be aware of it so you can be the determining factor on how you want to use the app. Okay? Other questions before we take a small break? All right, I tell you what, it is 2:15. I'm going to start back up again at exactly 2:30. Sound good? Let's just take a small break. Thank you. All right, let's get back to it, shall we, folks? It's go time. Leave the door open for those that are still trickling in from our break. But we're going to get started. We have a bunch of stuff we still need to continue. So hopefully our conversation today has at the very least inspired and begun to help you understand the selection and the navigation engine inside of Maya, right? But this is an animation class, so I want us to get into the movement properties that we really need to do some really work. And the animation engine inside of Maya is actually honestly quite good, okay? So the entire, well, if you're in the Maya Classic workspace, you're actually in the animation workspace. It's kind of one of the nice things about working inside of Maya. We don't have to go to a different tab where the layout's all different. We have different tools. All the animation tools are right in front of you, okay? However, they're a little bit hidden. They're kind of docked on these two bottom rows at the bottom of our interface, okay? This third row, this is an opportunity for us to insert commands and with Mel, okay? This is our script editor in here. It's also, this row gives us a little bit of feedback as to what the application is actually doing, what commands are being evaluated, and kind of like a window into the back door of the app. But the first two rows are our animation interface, okay? And directly, it's pretty easy to control. So let's talk about some major features that are critical, if not the most important part of our workflow, okay? We're going to start way over here with a little running man icon. And I'll zoom in so you guys can see specifically what I'm talking about. This little running man icon, this guy. Not this guy, this guy, okay? This is going to bring open all of our animation settings. And we need to start here first because there's some important properties that we need to change to ensure that what we're seeing in our timeline and what we're seeing in the viewport are synced together, okay? Specifically, these are just our global system properties, and it automatically takes us to the animation section. First and foremost, we need to do some good double checking, okay? In the cinema world, and most things in our world are going to revolve around the cinema space, okay? The frame rate for our animation timelines are almost always going to be 24 frames per second. If you're working in television, it's different. If you're working overseas in the PAL world, it's different. But this is where we can go to change our playback rate, our frames per second. We're going to leave it at 24. You can see there's a whole series of presets in here, including 48,000 frames per second. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but yes, you can do that, okay? But let's take it back to 24 frames a second. Okay. The other thing that we want to check, and this is things that we can change in other areas, is the animation start and end, okay? The animation start and end represents the total duration of our timeline. We have a defined timeline. These aren't infinite timelines like you'd see over in Premiere Pro or over in Final Cut Pro. We tell the computer exactly how many frames our timeline is going to be, okay? And we do that in the animation start and animation end. The defaults are a good place for us to begin. I think for today, I'm simply going to reduce this to, I'll put it to 48, just a quick 2-second animation for us. That way we don't have to manage this crazy timeline. So 48, okay? Playback start and end, I'm also going to put this to 40. This is the preview range, so we're going to be able to preview frames 1 through 48 on the timeline itself. There's some things down here that I'll let you customize and control. The height, I can zoom out. The height is simply just the height of our timeline. Right now at 1x, here's 2x, and here's 4x, so you can start to customize this a little bit to make it work the way you want it to work. I'm going to put this back to 1x. This is for me, you're going to see on your timeline the representation of a keyframe. It's going to be a very thin red line. I've learned with working on these big projector screens that I need to increase the key tick size to something like 2 or 4, just so you guys can see the timeline or the keyframes on my timeline. So this is just for me. Display time, I'll let you kind of fiddle around with that. But playback, this is another critical area that we need to look at, okay? Check it out, playback speed, and it says play every frame. If you look at the options here, we can see why this is so important. If it's on play every frame, basically the computer is going to try to play back your animation as fast as it's as it can, right? So it's going to ignore the frame rate, which seem strange, okay? But it's, if you have a really fast computer and a simple animation, it's going to play that animation as fast as it can, okay? As fast as it can computationally manage. So here's what I would recommend that you do, okay? Because it just does, okay? Put it to playback speed. It's 24 frames a second by 1. Okay, we're kind of defining the frame rate. If you leave it play every frame, you can say max playback speed is, you can do that for sure. Okay, but I do that. Okay, now we're saying you are going to play back this animation at 24 frames a second. You're not going to try to animate it or play it back at anything faster. On heavy animations with a lot of keyframes and really complex scenes, it'll start to chug a little bit and go slower, but at least you know that your understanding of your time is never going to be faster than what you've created, okay? Okay, you can also, if you want to do some looping, this is when you hit the play button in a timeline. Once it gets to the end, it'll just start over again if it's on continuous, okay? So you can customize this to give you a different experience down here, okay? The update view, you'll see this when we start going into multiple different viewports. We'll come back to that. Basically, this defines that whatever is the active viewport will get the animation. If you have a quad view, whatever viewport has that little white boundary around it, that's where the animation is going to be played back in. If it's set to all, then all four windows are going to be showing the animation, which can be good and bad depending on the computer that you're using. Naturally, when you have more windows trying to play back 3D information, it's going to bog down the machine if you have slower machines. All right, so the big ones, frame rate, okay? Animation start and end, okay? And then playback speed. All right. Something that surprisingly a lot of people miss, and this is not a criticism, it's just something that I've noticed people miss, is the save button. A lot of folks, they make a change, and what do? Bloop, they X out of it, thinking that those changes are going to be saved. Not in Maya, okay? If you make a change to these properties, you got to hit the save button, and then it saves the changes and closes the window, okay? All right, with that said, let's get to work of animating here, okay? It's pretty straightforward. In Maya, what we're doing when we're animating is that we're animating specific translation channels on an object. This is an object-based animation engine. So we're never, ever, ever going to be animating verts, edges, and polygons. We're only going to be animating the object, the king of the kingdom, the king and queen of the entire world. We're never going to be animating the surf, going back to our earlier example. Sorry, surf, that's what happens, right? So when we want to make something move inside of Maya, we need to ensure that we're in the object level animation, or the object level selection set, okay? As I mentioned just a second ago, this is channel-based animation. So we first select an object that we want to animate, and then we have to tell the computer specifically which channels that we want to have the computer to generate keyframes for. This is actually no different than any other computer animation system on the face of the planet. This is how After Effects does it. This is how Modo does it. This is how Cinema 4D does it. I mean, this is kind of consistent stuff. For us to get access to the channels, we have to be in what's called, not surprisingly, the channel box, okay? And you can find the channel box right here, okay? So if you look at the channel box, I got my torus selected. These are all the basic transform channels of this object. The translate, fancy word for position. Of course, you have all your rotation and your scale channels. These are fundamentally what we're animating, okay? On all objects, we're animating the position, the rotation, and scale of things. Congratulations, you're now Pixar-ready animators. You're just animating the position, rotation, and scale of things. That's really it in the computer. That's it, okay? No, I joke around. That is what we are doing, but we're animating position, rotation, and scale with very complex objects that have a lot of high-level math and deformers and a whole suite of other things that interpret what we're able to do. But for today, we're just animating the position, the rotation, and the scale. The cool thing about working inside of Maya is that anytime you change the position of an object, it's logged here inside of the channel box. Let me show you what I'm talking about. The current location is this, 2.2x. If I was to put this back to 0, hit the Enter key on my keyboard, okay? Boom, it goes back to the origin. Let's just do that again. I'm going to move this guy way over here, right? Here's the origin. I've translated along the x-axis to 2.93. I can put it back to the origin just by returning that value to 0, and then it zips back. Okay. Okay, we move it, and it's logged. Okay, it always remembers the current location of an object. This is required. We need the computer to track the location of all these objects so that we can ask it to interpolate between two different positions. At the core of what we're doing when it comes to animation is that we're asking the computer to remember the location of the object at one frame and then the location of the object at a different frame, then to automatically go between those 2 points for us. It's called interpolation. Okay? Let's do it. It's pretty easy. So I want to start to animate this object moving. This is going to be the best animation ever today. That's how we got to start, right? We're going to move our little donut from the left side all the way over here to the right side. Okay? So what we're going to do is return to the channel box. Okay? And we're going to do it simply first, and then we're going to expand on this to make it a little bit more fluid, this whole animation process. So since we're animating channels within an object, I just want to animate the X channel. Okay? If we were to right-click, key selected. Our channel box has changed a little bit. What are you seeing here? Yeah, the little red bar. That red bar is an important icon for us inside of Maya. Check it out. That red bar represents a keyframe. And you can see it chilling down here in our timeline as well. Okay? I'm going to go back to my settings real fast and make my key tick size like gigantic. There we go. Here we go. Now we can see it. Now Sebastian in the back can see my keyframe on my timeline. Okay. That guy, the red guy, is the keyframe. Okay? So we key a specific channel. We get a little red indicator line in the channel box. And we also get a red indicator line down over here in our timeline. Okay? This is called a keyframe. Keyframes aren't magical. I imagine these keyframes kind of like those little plastic eggs they get at Easter, right? You pop them open, there's like a little Hershey Kiss or like a Skittle or something on the inside, right? If you crack open these eggs, on the inside it's just data. And specifically, it's just position, rotation, and scale data. That's the only thing that's on the inside of a keyframe, okay? What we're doing when it comes to computer animation is that we're telling the computer at this moment in time, your location needs to be whatever's on the inside of that little plastic Easter egg, okay? I want to move my playhead forward to frame 24 just by clicking on the number. Bloop. And now I want to change the location of my torus. So the question was, how did I get that keyframe? Let's go back in time. I'm just going to hit undo. Okay, so I went over to the channel box, and I right-clicked on the Translate X channel. I right-clicked and held, and then key selected. You're welcome. This is the manual way of doing it. We're going to get it. We're going to extend this system here in a minute. So we got a keyframe on the channel box, and we got a keyframe down here in our timeline. Okay. We'll come back to that here in a second. Hang tight. It does, but it's not on by default. And Moto is on by default. Okay. So the first step that we have in our animation sequence here is that we have to create a keyframe. Okay. The second step that we have to follow if we want our little torus to go from the left to the right is that we're going to move the playhead forward to when we want our animation to end. Okay? I have a keyframe on frame 1. Maybe I want my stupid little animation to end here on frame 24. So I physically have to move my playhead forward. Okay? This is why I was clicking on frame 24. Bloop. So this little gray box here is the playhead. It's the current time indicator. Okay? It's the moment in our timeline that the computer is viewing. Step 1, create a keyframe. Step 2, move the playhead. Step 3, what is it, do you think? I like Patty's hand signal. Right. Hand language. Yes. And she's absolutely right. We have to move the object. We have to physically move the object in our three-dimensional space. Okay? I'm just going to fire off the move tool here real fast. I'm going to pull on the red handle to right about there. Okay? Now, Evgenia kind of found something really early on here. She says, it didn't make a keyframe for me automatically. No. And it's not going to. We have the functionality to turn this auto keying system on and off. It's off by default, okay? I need another keyframe here. I need an additional red bar. If we return to our channel box, same system all over again. Right-click, key selected, boom. Now we have another red bar showing up in our timeline downstairs, okay? Let's hit the play button over there on the right, see what we get. Whoop. Magic, right? Pixar, here we come, right? This is it. Yeah, you feeling it? I'm feeling it too. Feeling it feels good. Good to get things moving, right? Yeah, right? Yeah, if you just came from GCOM 400, this is a happy thing to see, right? Yeah.
That's why I was like, it slides by itself.
I love that there's some fresh pain from GCOM 400 that I enjoy seeing. Okay, so let's get some help. Chris, you said yours is a movie? Okay. Go to frame 24. Let's see what you got. Here's what we got to do. You went to frame 24, but now we got to move it, physically move it that way, and right-click and do key selected. There we go. Okay, now try playing it. See what you got. There it is. Yep. Any other people that don't have their little donut moving? Everyone's good? Okay, cool. All right. Let's stop the animation here for a second and look at how we can make this system go a little bit faster for us, okay? At the core of what we're doing, basically, this is it. We're selecting channels, we're establishing a value for that channel, and then we're asking the computer to remember that value at a very specific time in our timeline. That's it. That's the magic of computer animation, all kind of distilled down to its simple moving parts, okay? However, this process is kind of a machine in the way of our artistic process, right? We need to remove this as much as we can. Let me show you some keyboard shortcuts that will help, okay? All right. Okay, so I'm going to go back in time. I want to hit undo a couple times here and just get rid of all of my keyframes, okay? So one of the things that we can do to make life go a little bit easier for us is yeah, we'll come back. Let me do this, and then we'll come back to that in question then, okay? All right. All right, so let's kind of speed this process up a little bit to make it a little bit more fluid, okay? First and foremost, there's some great keyboard shortcuts that you should commit to memory, okay? So if I fire off the Move tool, okay, of course we can translate our objects. I got these three channels selected over here. Instead of right-clicking and doing key selected, okay, what we can do, and I dropped my selection, is that I can hit the S key. The S key on your keyboard, okay, S as in September, is going to key everything, okay? Look at the channel box. All 10 of my animation channels now have a red box next to them. S. S is in September.
Is it different on Windows?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Mine doesn't.
Okay. Do you have it selected?
Yeah.
Get the Move tool? I don't know.
And the Move tool.
S key, huh? I don't know. I'm not aware of a difference of the keyboard bindings between a Mac and a PC, but it's not Windows, something else then. So S is the keyboard shortcut for keying, okay? So in addition, let's do this. Once again, I've moved my playhead to frame 24. I want to move it over here, okay? What's the keyboard shortcut? It's key everything again?
S.
S. Boom. It's a fast way of very quickly generating keyframes, okay? We're up and running. Now, Evgenia had a question of how do I go in and physically delete, okay, a keyframe? There's a couple ways you can do it. You can right-click on the keyframe in your timeline and delete it. That gets rid of it, okay? I believe, and I'm going into my Wayback Machine. Everyone sending some good vibes. Think positive, thinks happy thoughts. Happy thoughts. I'm about to experience a crash. Oh no! All right, give me a second.
I never just had a tendency to crash a lot
as well, like with Mata?
Say again?
Does it common with Maya as well?
Crashes? Yes. Let me help a little bit. Or let me say something that I think is going to help. All computer apps are going to crash. All computer apps are going to crash, especially in the 3D space. Especially in the 3D space. What we are asking these little iMacs to do is pretty intense. Okay, the computers that we are sitting in front of are not meant for what we're doing. Fundamentally, they're going to crash. Huh?
So much better.
No,
I'm not a Mac fan.
no, it has nothing to do. No.
Macs are either like $1,800 fancy grandma or $5,000 ridiculously powerful computers.
Yeah.
Nothing in between.
Yeah. And
It's like if you need a new computer, you just gotta upgrade it. You gotta go buy a whole new $5,000 computer.
so lean into the idea these apps are going to crash. Lean in, okay? Save every 5 minutes, okay? That's the only way to mitigate a crash. Let me get my Taurus back.
I had a Mac one time, and when I had to
All right.
basically buy a whole computer just to upgrade it, I was like, oh, I'm going back to PC.
All righty, rats. So let's keep cruising here, guys. All right, so I believe you can unkey something from the channel box. And yeah, I think oh, it doesn't like me trying to select the visibility tab. Yeah. Let's try this again. Third time's a charm. Right-clicking on the timeline on your keyframe is a great way to very quickly cut your keyframe or delete it. Okay. Classic. This time I'm not going to select visibility. Key selected. And then I think if I remember correctly, yeah, cut selected in your channel box. That's another way you can do it. Oops, zoomed in too close, sorry. Yeah, you could. That's one way of doing it. If you're doing it in your timeline, that works, absolutely. If you can also do it in your channel box by right-clicking on the channel and then cut selected. Yep, and then all your keyframes go away. Okay, so one thing, and this is something that I like to honestly have on, okay? Because animation is a fluid kind of process that we want to get into, right? We want to try to shuffle all of the technology away as much as we can, right? Because this is an artistic medium, and we want to participate in that, right? Keying can be very mechanical, especially when you're having to move something, go all the way over the channel box, key selected, or at the S key. That can turn into a nightmare pretty fast. That's just a machine in the way. Luckily for us, we have an auto key system for us. Buyer beware, okay? This is an easy way of generating a lot of unneeded keyframes, but it speeds up the process of keying, okay? So once again, I'm gonna do the exact same thing. I'm not gonna hit the S key. I am gonna add a keyframe on just this translation X, right? I'm going to go forward to frame 24, but this time, okay, I'm not going to move it initially, okay? This time, I'm going to turn on the auto keying system, okay? The auto key system is found right next to our animation system preferences. System preferences, this turns on the auto key system, okay? Auto key. What this is going to do, let's just turn it on real fast, okay? Since there's already a keyframe on this channel, any edits that are made to that channel on a different frame are going to be automatically keyed in, okay? So now I'm on frame 24. When I move this, whoop, what happened? That was unexpected. Now I got 2 copies. But I did key it. Oh, I think I duplicated it. Here's what happened. I hit the Create Torus button twice. That's why I had 2 copies. I forgot that I had done that. My bad. So the auto key system allows us to work very smooth and very quickly. Okay? Let's just get back to a point where we can see it. All right. So here it is, frame 1, frame 24. Let me turn the auto key system back on. I'm going to travel over here to frame 60, or let's just do frame 48. And I want to move this back over here to the starting line. The moment I let go of the mouse cursor, it creates a keyframe for me. Okay? If we play our timeline now, there it is. Cool, huh? Is that the Jeopardy song? That was rad if it was. So the auto key system is a great way for us to very, very quickly get through this keying process. Okay? I like having it on. Say again? Question? So the button can be found in the lower right-hand corner of our interface, right here. Okay, turn it on. Yep, that's the auto key system. And the auto key, let me just delete some of this stuff. Okay. So auto key is on. We have to manually key it once, okay? That's the part that a lot of folks miss. You got to manually key it once, okay? And then we move the playhead, and then when we move the object, it automatically creates a keyframe for us, okay? Move the playhead, move the object, it creates a keyframe for us, okay? Okay. So this is a pretty cool little animation that we got going on here, but maybe I want to go in and change the timing. Okay, maybe I want to move these keyframes around inside of our timeline a little bit. Perhaps I don't want to have my animation begin until frame 12, and I want that middle keyframe to be on frame like 48, and that final keyframe to be on frame 60 or something thereabouts, right? The timeline downstairs does a very, very bad job of allowing us to do that. Okay. I believe you can do it. I got to remember. No, I don't think you can anymore. And you don't want to. You don't want to have to manage and edit your keyframes in this timeline. This is just allowing you to understand that there is a keyframe there on the selected object. A lot of folks panic when they deselect something, because what happened to all my keyframes? Poof, disappeared, and people start to wholesale panic. They go, did all my work go away? No, it's going to filter the timeline based on the selection, right? Whatever's selected here, we'll see all the keyframes for that selected object down here. Okay. Today, we're going to look at an animation window that will allow us to edit the location of these keyframes. Not their values, but just their location in the timeline. And it's called the dope sheet. So if we go to the top of the screen under Window, Animation Editor, excuse me, Dope Sheet. Let's open up the good old Dope Sheet. All right. So admittedly, and I wish that the developers at Autodesk would listen to its users, this is a very difficult environment to consume. Okay, and I think it has everything to do with the design of the dope sheet itself. But what we're seeing here are keyframes. superimposed upon a timeline. These bars here are our keyframes, okay? And of course, we see our timeline downstairs. If we were to use our viewport navigation commands, we can zoom in and zoom out, pan around in here. So I'm just using my left mouse, or excuse me, my right mouse button, and I'm dragging this way, middle mouse button, okay? So same viewport navigation commands, okay? But this is where we can go in and we can start moving things around. And I need to open it up. And yeah, it's the middle mouse button allows you to move the keyframes. Middle mouse button allows you to move the keyframes. So this is where we retarget where these keyframes are going to live inside of our timeline. Okay. So now I can say, okay, this guy is on frame number 1. Maybe I want this animation to start on frame 12. Okay, and I could drag it here. Could also enter it in here. Okay. Same with this guy. I can put this one on frame 48. This one over here. Put this is on 96. There we go. And now I've completely retargeted this entire animation inside the dope sheet. Remember, the exclusive function behind the dope sheet is just to change the location of our keyframes. We're not changing their values, so we're not changing the contents of the little Easter egg, okay? We're just changing where these keyframes show up inside of our timeline, okay? However, you can go in and continue to refine this if you'd like, okay? If I was to take my playhead, let's just play it real fast. So if I went to that keyframe right there, it's telling me that that keyframe has been keyed that value. Getting cut off, that drives me crazy a little bit. I make it bigger? No. Oh, that's going to drive me crazy. Okay, so, but at frame 12, that's the value that's been keyed in, and that's not right. Oh, that's because I'm on frame 13. Sorry, I'm on frame 13. I was on the wrong frame. I was like, that's not right. Yeah, so you can go in and make changes. Like if I put that to 0, it'll override what's on that keyframe. So you can make small changes, but I really wouldn't recommend that you do. Okay? The dope sheet's primary focus here is just to select the keyframe, hold down the middle mouse button, and change its location inside of our three-dimensional scene. Okay? That's it. Keep it simple. Okay? Keep it simple. Let's play the animation, see what we get. Oops, that's my fault. I changed my frame, my animation play range. Ta-da! Okay, so this is how you can move keyframes around in your timeline, the dope sheet, okay? I believe you can delete. Delete the keyframes. Another great place to delete keyframes. The dope sheet has a lot of functionality, and it's one of 2 specific animation windows that we're going to be spending a lot of time on. This week it's all about the dope sheet. Can't remember if it's next week or the week after. We're going to talk exclusively about the graph editor. And the graph editor is going to be one of those days that it's going to be a heavy day, right? It's a heavy day. Okay. All right. Questions so far? So the question was, how do we bring up the dope sheet? It is under the Windows pull-down menu, Animation Editors, Dope Sheet. Okay. Other questions so far? So we've created an object. We've animated an object. We've created, we now have the functionality with the dope sheet to edit the keyframes of the object, including deleting the keyframes, moving the keyframes, and changing some basic rudimentary values. Right? Everyone with me? Now comes time to rendering our animation. Okay? Rendering inside of Maya is fun. Is fun. This is probably the biggest challenge that you're going to have to overcome. Okay, is rendering in Maya. Okay. The reason it's not that it's difficult, it's just it can be very complex, okay? Maya is a platform. It's a studio tool, okay? It has its own, if you're coming from Modo, we were coddled in Modo, right? Because they gave us a really great rendering engine, and it was really easy to use, okay? Out of the box, you can create pretty pictures very quickly inside of Modo, right? In Maya, you have a better rendering engine. It's just everything is, there's no like, let's think, this is the way to think of it. Maya was an automatic transmission car, or Modo was an automatic transition car, right? Anyone can jump into Modo, hit the gas pedal, vroom, you're off and racing, right? Maya is a manual transmission car, right? Yeah. Still extraordinarily powerful. You can do the exact same thing, but now everything, you know, you're going to be bunny hopping across the parking lot, you know, a little bit. Does anyone know how to drive a stick? I drive a stick.
I know how to drive an automatic, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
I drive one every day.
Nice, me too. I used to. The first 2 cars that I have were all, I miss my stick shift car. I had a little red truck that I loved. I loved that truck, right? That was, it just died. Yeah, it just died. It died of old age. I just drove it into the ground, and it just got too expensive to maintain. And then I had kids and grew up and became, you know, a working, contributing adult to society, and I had to get a different car. I had to get a minivan. Anyways, you know, so that's kind of what like Maya's like. Everything's manual. You can still do just as much. Actually, you can do a whole lot more. It just requires a couple extra sequential steps, okay? The first sequential step is choosing our renderer, okay? There's actually a whole suite of different renderers that we can use inside of Maya. Modo had one. It had the default renderer, and that was it. And it was a damn good renderer too, right? Maya has about 8 or 9, including some big dogs like Renderman. Okay, does anyone know who makes Renderman? Pixar. Okay, Pixar has their own rendering technology, and it integrates directly into Maya. We actually are trying to get Pixar donated 35 licenses of Renderman to us, and we're trying to get that up and running here in the next couple of weeks. It's taken some more resources than we anticipated. The point being is that we get to pick and choose what rendering technology we want to use. Maya has their own rendering engine. It's called the Maya Software Rendering Engine. And I think even Autodesk would say that the Maya Software Rendering Engine is a gigantic steaming pile of garbage. It's horrible. Horrible, okay? Let me show you. The Maya Software Rendering Engine is the rendering engine that came with Maya like 20 years ago, and they haven't done a single thing since with it, right? Their entire corporate philosophy is, well, all these other folks are doing it a whole lot better. Why are we going to invest a whole lot of development dollars in making our own physically based renderer when Pixar's doing theirs, Octane's doing one, V-Ray, Arnold? I mean, there's a lot of choices, okay? Huh? So we're going to be using a rendering engine that comes with Maya. It's not developed by Maya. It's developed by a company called Solid Angle, and it's called the Arnold Rendering Engine, and it's actually quite good. It's a physically based rendering engine. It creates some beautiful pictures, and it's incredibly, incredibly powerful. But there are a couple things that we need to do with the Maya interface to set it up, okay? So let me bring you into the rendering workflow a little bit more directly inside of Maya, okay? First and foremost, we have to transition over into our global render globals, our render global properties, which is this icon right here, okay? These little clapboard icons, these are all the rendering functionality of the app in this row right here at the top of our interface. Clapboard, little gear icon on it. This is going to bring open your render properties, your settings, excuse me. I've had other classes in here beginning to render with Arnold, but if you're doing this at home, render using, don't use Maya software. It's bad. It's not just bad, it's amazingly bad. Okay? What we want to render with is Arnold, the Arnold renderer. Okay? So we physically have to go in and tell the computer which technology to use. Okay? So once you change the rendering engine, a whole series of new render properties come to the surface. For almost everything that we're going to be doing in this class, we need to change the resolution. So way down here at the bottom, we need to change the image size. 1280 by 720. Once we have that, let's just close our render properties, and we'll get to work. Okay. All right. So on the surface, rendering using the Maya kind of workflow can be a little strange. Okay. What you are seeing, each viewport, or the viewport that's the active viewport, is going to determine what's going to be drawn. Okay. To help you out, I want you to turn on a part of your viewport. Okay, that's going to allow us to see the boundaries of the render size or the render frame. Okay, it's up here. Each viewport has the exact same top row, which will allow us to change the shading properties and a number of different things. This button right here is going to add what's called the resolution gate. So it's the square with a little blue dot on the inside. Click it. Now we see the boundaries of our render. Okay, now we see the boundaries of what the computer is going to create for us. Okay, so there it is. There's 1280 by 720. So we need to make sure that we're composing a shot that works inside this boundary. Okay, you see this lovely little ghost. Question?
Can you show this again?
Yes, absolutely. It's this little button right here. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was clicking on the wrong one. It's this one. It's the blue dot. Blue dot. This one over here just kind of fills in the outline. Same thing, though. The blue dot. Okay. All right. 1280 by 720. Now, check it out. Now, I'm just going to put my little donut right there. And let's fire off a render. To fire off a render inside of Maya, we go back to this top row. And yeah, to change the render size, go to here, the render settings. The clapboard, the slate, as it's called, with the gear icon. And specifically, I've chosen the Arnold renderer, and at the very bottom of this gigantic list of options is width and height. Width and height. All right. So we're going to return to the clapboard icons. So two that you need to be aware of. This first one, this one's going to open your render window, but it's not actually going to draw the picture. This one is going to draw the picture. Look. Boom. Mic drop them out. No, what's the problem? It's black, right? There's nothing in there. Where's my donut? Where's the camera? Yeah, right? Why is it black?
Because there's no lighting.
Because there's not a single light in the scene itself. Okay? Yeah, so we need to go in and start adding a light inside of our scene to start crafting some illumination. Okay? This is where we were spoiled with the Modo rendering system, is that it gave us the default light, and it made a pretty background, and it did all this wonderful stuff for us automatically right out of the gate. We get the exact same functionality. We got to add everything in, right? So let's add a light. It's really easy to do that. Goodbye, render window. Now we're going to go not to the rendering section, although this would work, okay? But keep cruising. I want you to get used to going to the Arnold tab for rendering stuff. The Arnold shelf. And then in here, we have some lights. And this first one will do. This is an area light. And for what we're going to be doing in this class, this is just fine. We'll talk about some other light types as we get a little bit more experience and as we go through the semester. But for today, the area light can be just fine. So let's add an area light by clicking on it. Yoink. Where did it automatically get placed inside of our three-dimensional scene? The origin. Okay? This is where the outliner really comes into play. I like having the outliner around. Okay? There we go. All right. Because now there's my torus. Here's my area light. I can just click on it, fire off the move tool, and I'm going to move and rotate this thing to a spot, maybe, oh, I don't know, right around there. What's that gigantic line coming out the front of that square? And it represents the direction that this light is facing. Okay? So right now that line is generally pointed towards my donut. I'm happy with that. So I'm going to draw my picture. Let's do another render. Ha! Victory! Well, not so much, right? We're getting there. Kinda, we're getting there, right? We're getting there, but we have some work that we need to do, right? What do we need to do?
Intensify the light.
You got it. We just need more light. We need to make it brighter inside of our 3D scene, okay? Now the way we do that is what? How would we start to change the properties of an object? Bingo. We got to select it first, and then where we're going in our 3D scene is called the attribute editor, okay? Think of it like this. It's the properties panel, okay, if you're coming from Moto. So I have my area light selected, and I'm going to do this. I didn't do a very good job of positioning it. There we go. That's better. All right. So I got my light selected, and now I'm going to go into the attribute editor. If it's not in this vertical tab, you can get to the attribute editor by clicking on this icon inside of your interface. Modeling toolkit, human IK, this is the attribute editor, this is the tool settings and channel box. So this one right here is your attribute editor.
Do we have any preview board so we can see how it will feel like when we're rendered? Do we have a preview?
We're going to come back to that. The answer is yes, we do. We do have a preview window. Okay. Yes.
What does turning off normalize do? Because it seems to make it brighter. What exactly does turning off normalize?
Are you in the attribute editor?
Yep.
Yeah. This one right here? Yep. Yeah. I don't know. I'm going to guess, and this is just purely a guess, that the decay rate for this physically based light is being disabled, and that it's just going to be the photons being emitted from the light are not going to reduce in their intensity as they travel away from the light. That's my guess. Let's just increase the intensity here real fast. Okay. Now, this is something that's going to take some getting used to, and I actually honestly hate this about just the Maya interface. Okay. When you see a slider like this, so I'm messing with intensity. Okay. It was on 1. I left-clicked and dragged that slider to the right, and it maxed out as 10. As a user, what do you think when you hit the farmost right side of that slider? That's it. This is a 1 to 10 range slider. No, that's not the case at all, actually. Okay? We can continue to drive this value past what the range slider communicates to us. Let's make another picture. Much brighter. Happy with that. But maybe I want it even brighter still. Over here in my attribute editor, this is where we can start manually going in and putting like 50. Enter. Let's make another picture. And there we go. Okay. So the range sliders in your attribute editor aren't necessarily an indicator of how far you can adjust these channels. And now we're getting there. Okay. Cool, huh? It'd be great, and it'd be really awesome to get kind of an interactive preview of how these changes are affecting our render. Okay? Right now, with the system that we've described, you got to keep doing a full-blown render to see how these changes impact the picture that's going to be created, right? This is neat. I like this next part. Okay, I'm going to close down the standard render window. Okay, so I got there by hitting that button. Now, if you go into the Arnold shelf, check it out. Hit this button, the play button. You're going to get a different window. It looks kind of the same, okay? But now, this is the live preview of the final render properties, or the final render itself. So any changes we make to the lights in our scene, and I'm just going to select my area light one more time, okay? Now, since the Arnold preview engine's going, I can change the intensity. Okay, so now we're just getting kind of live updates to how these changes affect what's going on. I can change the color to that if I wanted to, so on and so forth. Okay? This is just a preview. You're not actually drawing anything here yet. It's just a preview. So you only want to have this window open when you're setting things up, but when you're ready to commit, then you got to go back to that top row and click draw me a picture. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. So one of the other things that I'm happy, and it's a good and a bad thing, let's just put it that way, okay, is that the default environment inside of Maya is just going to be black. Okay? It's just a black, empty space. It's kind of like it's kind of like space. It's just an infinite void of nothing. Okay? We want from time to time to put something in the background of our scene. Now we're going to get more sophisticated with this as we go. Today, I'm going to keep it very simple. Okay? I don't want to have a black background. I want to have something in the background that I can control. In Arnold, we have these lovely options. And I want to choose, see this one that looks like a globe? Okay? This allows us to create a skylight or a dome light. Okay? This is physically going to be a sphere that our scene is going to live in. Okay? And the color of this sphere is going to determine what our render looks like. Let's just add one in. We have skylight, and don't do the portal. The physical sky, I'll let you explore the physical sky. It's neat. We'll talk about this going forward in the future. But for today, just to keep it simple, we're going to do this guy. Okay? So now, if you look at my scene, there's a gigantic sphere back there. Okay, and it really is just a sphere. Let's do another render. Things are beginning to look a little different. Okay? The color, the inside color of that sphere is white. If we select it, maybe I want the background color to be not white. Maybe I want it to be, I don't know, kind of like a mid-gray or something. Yeah, and then it's kind of washing some stuff out here, so I got to make some adjustments to my lights. Maybe the intensity is too much. I think it's the sky of the dome. Let's put it back to white. There we go. Lower the intensity down some so it's not washed out my image as much. But we got to make some property changes in here as well. Yeah. For today, let's just get a color back there so it's not black. Okay? That's all. That's kind of where we're going. We just don't want black. All right? In the future, we'll start loading some images back there so it'll look like a real world. Okay? All right. So we've added two things into our to set up our render: an area light and a physical sky. I'm going to pretend that I'm a happy camper. This is looking good, and now it's time for me to physically render my animation. Okay? We're going to be rendering almost everything in this class. Almost everything. It's part of the practice and part of the craft that we're participating in, okay? So lean into the idea that every single week there's going to be a render, okay? This is going to take, depending on the computer that you render on it, an hour or two to render. Plan around this. The guys and gals the guys and gals down at the design lab are very, very, very flexible in rendering things, okay? If, for example, if you wanted to render in the morning and then have that computer render all day long, they will allow you to do that. They absolutely will. Or they'll shut down the machine, they'll put a little sign on the front that says rendering, please don't mess with, and we can lock down a machine. Happens all the time, and I encourage you guys to think through it as much as you can. Plan it out. You can't avoid the render. You really can't, okay? One of the things that I do is that I try to render when I try to have the computer work and render when I'm not at the computer, right? Like for you guys, come into the design lab in the morning. If you have a class at 9, get there at the lab at 8, fire off a render. You go to class, do your thing, and have the machine cook while you're in class, right? And then when you're done with that other class, you come back, you get your frames, boom, you're up and going. Okay? Yeah. All right, so let's get this out. I need to render, I'm not going to render this entire thing. And this is where our render settings come into play here, right? I only want to export out maybe 24 frames. So this is where the animation start and stop is really super important. Now to render our animation, rendering an individual still image, super easy, right? Boop. There it is, just rendered. Option. But where is the ability to render your animation? Okay, let's find out. It's actually one of the things that I really generally kind of drives me crazy. And I always forget where it is, excuse me, because it's not in the spot that it takes me. I'm horrible with lists, and I think this is the world's cruel trick with me, because I'm in the wrong section, yeah. This is why I hate and love working in Maya. I'm horrible with lists, so it's a cruel trick played on me that I have to live in a world where there's zillions of lists, okay? Check it out. In order for us to render an animation, we have to change all the top-down pull-down menus inside the app, okay? This is another thing that's really important if you're working in and out of the lab, okay? Check it. So see this button here? So this is modeling. When it's in modeling, all of these top menus are modeling tools, okay? See it says mesh, edit mesh, mesh tool, mesh displays, okay? If we were to change it to rigging, now we have rigging menus, okay? Come on, click off it. Let's go into rendering. This is what I was looking for. It always takes me, I've been doing this for 15 years in Maya, and it always takes me a beat to remember. Okay, so we have to be in the rendering pull-down menus, and what we're going to do is we're going to render sequence. Yeah, so this is the point, right? You fundamentally have to change this button right here. The default is modeling. You got to be in rendering. Yeah. Admittedly, that's not good design. Okay. And then we get our render pull-down menu, and we can go in and start rendering our sequence. As you start to explore these pull-down menus, there's a common theme between a lot of these options, and that common theme is this little box, this little square. Has anyone stumbled on what those little squares provide you? This is the insanity of our interface at times. Extra options. So if we go into render sequence and then click on the square, okay. Now we have some nuanced controls that allow us to control certain functionalities of whatever option we've selected on. Okay. So in this one, here's what I would like you to do, just as a test. So we're in a current frame, or the frame, or the camera that's going to be rendered out is the perspective camera, which is fine for what we're doing right now. Ignore all of this stuff for the most part. But this one, alternate output file location, check it out. This is what I want you to do. This is going to allow you to save your file and all these render frames in a very specific spot. And let's do this. I'm going to put mine on my desktop, and I'm going to create a new folder. I'll call this Pat's Crazy Donut. Why not? It's the end of the day. Let's hit select. Okay. Render sequence. Now the computer's going to take over. And it should. Oops. Oh, this is my fault. Sorry. This is my fault. So it did exactly what I wanted it to do, but it did not. I do not have my render settings established correctly. Because if you look at what was created, let's go back into Finder. Here's Pat's Crazy Donut. Here it is. It's an EXR file. I don't want an EXR file. Okay. EXR files are great. They really are. But they're for like if you're doing Star Wars, then you make an EXR file. The bit depth on an EXR file is intense. It's super huge, right? And the files that you get are perfect, but they're gigantic, right? This is a 1280 by 720 picture, and it's 1.4 megabytes, okay? I've seen EXRs, just single frames, that's like, well, I think it's like 130 or 140 megabytes for one frame. The data that's included in these images are insane, like 32-bit float images. It's nuts, right? You only make those if you're working on Star Wars. For the rest of us mere mortals, we want JPEGs, TIFFs, PNGs, okay? So we need to change some of our render settings. Let's go back. Of these options, which is going to expose our render settings? Yeah, the gear, that one. And there's just a couple things in here that we need to change that we forgot to go to. Okay, so, and specifically, frame range, here we go. All right, so we don't want an EXR. I want a PNG. I want an 8-bit PNG. Color space, let's just use view transform, which is fine. We can give it its own naming convention if we wanted to, but this is going to be, this we'll do this test for the prefix. Yeah, there we go. We don't need to do anything in here. Yep, there we go. Okay, so let's try this again. So if we render sequence, it may only render that first frame again, but let's see what happens. Yeah, that's interesting because I got an error message earlier. Okay, let me troubleshoot this. But it did the right thing. It named a test. Yay, and it saved my one frame. 78 kilobytes versus 1.4 megabytes. Okay, but it's still only rendering that first frame, right?
I don't really have anything in the settings, render settings.
What do you mean you don't have anything? Okay. Keith, do me a favor. What computer number are you? Look at the upper right-hand corner. It should say student. Keith, what computer number are you? Upper right-hand corner. So it says a student and then a number. 15. All right. Let's take a look at what's going on. Or not. Come on, little machine. Connect already. Because if Keith's having a problem, we'll probably have this problem as well. All right. Go to the System tab, please. Get out of here. Close this entire render window. Keep going. Get out of here. Go to the top of your interface and click on the little clapboard with the gear icon on it. Keep going. Your mouse was just on it there for a second. Keep cruising, keep cruising, keep cruising, keep cruising. Gear icon. To your left. Not that one. Oh, I see what you mean. Oh. Instead of where it says render using Arnold renderer, put it back to Maya software. Let's see what you get. This is an interesting bug. Okay, good. Now change it to Arnold. Huh. Well, that's fun, isn't it?
Arnold probably.
Okay.
I had to install it like manually like I did last time, where Arnold wasn't on the computer.
Was it not on the computer or was it not loaded in Maya?
It wasn't. The Arnold wasn't on top of the
In the shelf? Yeah. Interesting. I'm going to take over just for 1 second, Keith, okay? Aha, I bet you didn't know I could do that. Get out of here. Windows. Yeah, okay. That's interesting, isn't it? That's fun. I have no idea what's going on. I really have no idea. Hang tight. Hang tight. And we'll see if we can figure this out during lab. Okay. So one quick thing. Let's see if we can get this, get it to render out my animations. Let's go back to let's go back to our render pull down menu. We're going to choose batch. Yeah, this is batch rendering options. Oh. So when you do a batch render, it's supposed to render your entire sequence. But I am now beginning to think. Look, here's the Maya software renderer. Doesn't that look good? No, it doesn't look good. Yeah. I have now. Interesting. Okay, well, I gotta figure this out. I have just been thrown a major monkey wrench. I remember someone telling me. Let's do this. I have one more thing I want to test. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Hello. Can I help you? All right. Rock and roll. Say again? Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So we are going to pivot here. We are going to pivot. Okay. All right. So I have a memory a couple years ago of someone saying to me that the Arnold renderer isn't. What was going on? At the end of the day, my brain's turning into mush, so I've missed something. Hold on a sec. I've made a couple changes as I've begun to. Hold on. In the render menu? The render settings. Yep.
Almost where your mouse is up. I can't read what that says, but it says parentheses single frame.
Oh, yeah. Yep, that's right. like I said, this is the end of the day. My brain's turning into a gigantic pile of goo. I've been talking since 9 o'clock, so I apologize. Yeah, yeah. I know, I'm just full of excuses at 4. Single frame, yeah, we need to just do it name, this is the frame number, and then this is the file extension, okay? So we want it to be name number extension, okay? Or actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do name underscore extension. That way it's the name of the file, underscore the frame number, and then JPEG. Okay. And let's do frame padding. We don't want any frame padding. Let's put that down to... So what we're doing frame padding, is changing how the file is created at 4. I mean, you could have it at 4. 3 is kind of like where I like to hang out. And let's see, this is good. Test. Let's try it again. Frame range. Let's do 24. End frame. There we go. Now we're up and running. Thank you. Let's see what happens now. Craig gets the bonus points for today. So the thing that I missed was that was that ever crucial render setting. Okay. And let's see. Can I open it up? No. This is rendering. Yeah, it's rendering right now.
Yeah, it's rendering
Every single frame in your timeline.
Every frame.
Yeah. That's why you got to tell it which frames to render. Yeah, this is going to take a bit, right? So what it's physically doing is, let's see if I get these windows out of the way. Yeah, there we go. See how it's going in and adding files? And as it's done with one, it just moves on to the next. So here's what I want you to do, okay? While this kind of cooks for a minute or two, here's what I would like you to do. I would like you to open up, go to the lab assignment, okay, which is that little coin. And I want to see if you can replicate that little coin flip, okay? No, replicate. Replicate the coin flip that you saw. So if we go back to Canvas. Coin flip. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to see if you can get this to work. We're going to move and rotate at the exact same time. Okay? See if you can get that to work. Get that to animate. Okay? If you can animate that real fast, we'll be on our way. Okay? And then I'll help. Question? Yeah, Bronco.
Does it have to be exactly like that?
No, it doesn't have to be exact, but if you can get it kind of close, that'd be good. Let's just physically, I've linked the project file is right here. There's the project file. Go ahead and get started. Okay? Let's get our hands dirty with some animation. Many of you guys have already done this. Okay?
So, Pat,
Yeah.
2 questions. One, is this good enough?
That's it? Yep. I think that's good.
And then, what else was I going to say? Oh, so for the render itself, I just literally have to let it sit there and render? Like,
Yeah.
I might have to render it at my house because
Yeah.
it's going to take a while.
No, rendering takes a while.
Take 5 minutes.
Rendering is going to take a while. This isn't instantaneous. Yeah. Rendering is not instantaneous. Yes. right click. There it is. All right. Ta-da! There's our logo. Okay, in 3D. So that's pretty neat. Simple materials. We'll have more deeper conversations about materials going forward. Okay. Since a couple folks have to go catch trains, I was going to talk about this in 20 minutes, but I want to make sure that they hear this because this is good info, and then we'll start working on some stuff. Okay. For your homework assignment this week, I'm going to leave you to your own devices, as they say. Okay. And I provided you guys with a really fun, a little fun puzzle. You're going to be making a scale model of our solar system. Okay. Now, luckily for us, our solar system is nothing more than a whole series of spheres. Okay. Let's take a look at the project file. Ta-da! You're welcome. It's just a whole bunch of spheres. Here's Mercury. Okay. This is my problem. I want to fix this right now because I did not.
Are they just stacked on top of each other?
They are. They're just stacked on top of each other. However, there's Saturn. They're all at the origin of the scene, right? They're all at the origin. I had to fix something. See how there's a zillion little animation keyframes down here? This is an export property that I didn't see. But one of the things that we need to do is that we need to change the location of all the planets in our solar system. Okay? And where's the central pivot point for all the planets in our solar system? The origin, right? Everything rotates around the sun. Okay? How can we change? How can we do that? Let's just grab Saturn, for example. Okay? I need to grab Saturn, okay, and I need to get it to move around the sun. Well, how can I do that real easy? You can't. Not real easy without changing a really important point. It's called the pivot point. Okay? Now, the pivot point, I think, is probably easily seen at the intersection of our translation handles. That's the pivot point. Wherever the tool handles show up, that's the pivot point for the object. Now, when I select Saturn, I want the tool handles, so I want to position it first, but then I want the tool handles to be over here, where the sun is. Okay? Now, luckily for us, there's a couple easy ways that we get to do this. And specifically, it's the D key. D is in dog, or delta. If you hit the D key, you enter into an edit mode of that object's pivot point. Okay? And we now can change where we want that pivot point to be. So simply, I'm just going to put it way over here. And I'm just going to do this visually. Let's look at my scene from the top. Whoa. A little too close. And I'm just going to get it where I want it to go. Right around somewhere in there. Cool. And then we hit the D key again to exit it. Now, when I select the rotation handles, check it out. Saturn is always going to rotate around the sun. Okay? Cool, huh? So the D key. So the beginning of this, once I fix my animation keyframe problem, is figuring out there's good old Mercury. And yes, because I'm super nerdy, this is actually a scale model of the solar system. Sorry, or the size of the planets in relationship to each other are correct because I'm super nerdy like that. Huh? I know, right? Because Mercury's pretty small in comparison to the sun, right? Sun's huge, right? Let's pick a different one. Like, this makes you feel really small. Earth. There's Earth. Okay? Especially when you compare it to the size of Saturn or Jupiter. But if I wanted to move the pivot point for Earth, what do I need to do?
Move it into the middle of the sun.
You got it. First things first, hit the D key to go into an edit mode. And then I want to move it way over here. Okay, that's pretty close for me. How do I get out of that edit mode for the pivot point? D, once again. And now, when I hit the rotate tool, Earth is always going to rotate.
But Saturn no longer rotates around the sun.
It does. Yep, I just didn't have it selected.
Select Saturn on here.
Yes, select Saturn. Now, I know very directly before a science nerd like me out there corrects me, I know that they don't work, that the orbits of our planet are not exactly spherical, okay, circular, okay, I get that, but for the context of our silly week 1 animation, it's going to be spherical, okay, so that's your assignment this week for your homework, okay, is to make a scale model and you're going to need to edit the pivot point of all the planets. Okay? In addition, you're also going to have to render this out. Okay? Render this out. You don't have to. Yeah, see you later, guys. Yeah, you don't have to. If you want to, I've shown you how to apply materials. If you want to go in and make each one of the planets like a different color, I'm never going to say no to that. I think that's good to kind of practice that entire process a little bit. Okay?
I've seen you have them in order.
Huh?
I've seen you have them in order.
In here?
Yeah, the planets.
Yeah, I mean, if you
Everything
want.
but the sun.
That'd be good.
No, you have it in order.
Did I get lucky?
Well, everything but the sun, I'm assuming. Because I know the sun was after Pluto, but then there was, for example, the sun, Mercury.
Yeah. Mercury, yeah, I got them in order.
Yeah.
Cool, I'm just that good sometimes.
I thought you meant to do that.
Let's say yes. Okay, so before people start to head out, or remember, there's two things that we're doing this week, okay? I'm going to make one small change right now to the assignment sheet to reflect the stuff that we've gone over in class. I don't want you guys to, when you're done with your renders, I want you to submit your image sequences to the Dropbox, okay? Don't submit a QuickTime movie. We didn't have time today to go over that process, so I'm not going to expect you to do it. I'll make that change to the assignment sheet right now, okay? So make sure you're doing the coin flip, render it out. Doing the solar system, render it out. For both of those assignments, I need your Maya project file and your renders submitted to the Dropbox. Sound good?
Mm-hmm.
Jepson.
So we like put it in the folder and compress it?
Bingo, you got it. Rock and roll.
Oh, and to let you know, if you do have a 2019 model file, it opens fine with 2019.
Perfect, good.
So,
We got lucky.
yeah, I guess so.
All right, other questions before I let you guys work on your lab? And I got to fix, don't start on the solar system thing for like 5 minutes because I got to fix one thing. I got to get rid of all these keyframes in there, and that's just my goof from my side. So I'm going to fix that and re-update the file. Questions, questions, questions?
What is the best kind of render here?
Say again?
How exactly do we like render animation?
Yeah, so two things to render your animation. First step, Chris. Okay, got to go into your render settings. Second step, okay, once you set to be like a PNG, the other thing that we need to change is the frame animation extension. Right now it's only going to render a single frame. We want it to be name underscore frame number and then extension. And then it's going to render whatever frames we put down here. Okay, so if end frame is 10, it's only going to render the first 10 frames of your sequence. Okay? Yeah.
It doesn't have to be the underscore one. It can be any of the other ones, right?
It could be any of the other ones. I would really recommend to use the underscore. Periods are kind of dangerous. If you look at the default extension, this is very dangerous, where it's name dot number dot extension. That's dangerous. Okay, a lot of web servers view a period as the beginning of an extension, or some web servers that represents the beginning of a new file. So I would really recommend you stay out of that convention as much as possible. This is fine. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I would do these bottom two personally. And then honestly, what I choose every time is this one.
So we're gonna eventually.
Show how do you render it exactly. So you open the render.
Yep. Then render sequence.
Okay. Do you want us to assign render sequence, right? Plus or no? Or the whole, like the whole video?
Well, you're going to render your animation, right? So if your animation is 24 frames, you need to render all 24 frames. Yep. Other questions?
So we're eventually gonna be bringing this into, I guess, After Effects or something to.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, have a good one.
So do we have to use media counter to convert all of their image files?
You know how? Do it. Yeah. Yeah. You know how to do that. So do it real fast. Just take a second. I didn't have time to go over that today, so I'm not going to expect folks to do that. I want to update these.
Told that they can assign like.
Yeah, you got it. Yep. I want to update the assignment sheet in about 30 seconds to say, please upload the image sequences. That's all I really care about. You can already get the sense that it's a lot on the first day, and I don't want to break the dam on the first day and have the floodgates of confusion opening up.
I download media in my computer.
Yeah. So let me stop the live stream real fast.
Sure.